Hello and welcome to our channel. Today, we'll travel back in time to witness one of the most monumental clashes of antiquity. The fight between Rome, the land-based elephant, and Carthage, the whale of the seas. A series of conflicts that lasted more than a century and defined the future of the Mediterranean. Are you ready? Let's begin with the First Punic War. Before we dive in, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single episode that uncovers history's most fascinating stories. In 264 before Christ, Rome and Carthage weren't sworn enemies. In fact, they had been allies against King Pyrrhus of Epirus. Rome was a land power expanding across the Italian peninsula, while Carthage, an ancient Phoenician colony, was the undisputed master of the maritime trade routes in the Western Mediterranean. Their spheres of influence seemed complementary, not antagonistic. But everything changed because of one island, Sicily. Rich in grain and in an unbeatable strategic position, Sicily was the battlefield where the interests of both powers were destined to collide. The spark that ignited the tinderbox was a group of Italian mercenaries, the Mamertines, which means sons of Mars. After the death of their patron, the tyrant of Syracuse, they brutally seized the city of Messana, located on the strategic strait that separates Sicily from Italy. Their reign of terror was challenged by the new ruler of Syracuse, Hiero II, who defeated them at the Battle of the Longinus River and besieged them in Messana. Desperate, the Mamertines asked for help from both Rome and Carthage. The Carthaginians, always watchful over Sicily, arrived first and installed a garrison in the citadel. But Rome, seeing a golden opportunity to prevent Carthage from controlling the gateway to Italy and to expand its own influence, decided to intervene. A Roman envoy, Gaius Claudius, convinced the Mamertines to expel the Punic garrison. This action was a direct provocation. Carthage allied with its former enemy, Syracuse, to besiege Messana. Rome's response was forceful. It sent a consular army, and the First Punic War had begun. Initially, the war was fought on land, where Rome had a clear advantage. Its disciplined legions were superior to the Carthaginian armies, which were largely composed of mercenaries from various ethnic groups. In 262 before Christ, the Romans achieved a crushing victory at the Battle of Agrigentum, the main Punic headquarters in Sicily, and brutally plundered the city. But Carthage didn't give up. Its power lay in the sea. Its fleet not only supplied its last strongholds in the west of the island, like Lilybaeum and Drepana, but also launched devastating raids on the coasts of Italy. The Romans realized an uncomfortable truth. To win the war, they had to dominate the sea. The problem was that Rome lacked a powerful navy and naval experience. Their solution? A stroke of military engineering genius. After capturing a shipwrecked Carthaginian quinquereme, they used it as a model to build their own fleet of more than 100 ships. But they didn't just copy. They invented a game-changing weapon, the corvus, or raven. It was an 11-meter boarding bridge with a heavy iron spike at the end. When a ship got close to an enemy vessel, the corvus would be dropped, a heavy spike impaling the enemy deck and creating a stable walkway. Suddenly, a naval battle became a land battle, the very ground where Roman legionaries were invincible. The corvus was a resounding success. In 260 before Christ, at the Battle of Mylae, the inexperienced Roman fleet annihilated the Carthaginian navy, to the astonishment of the Mediterranean world. With this new confidence, Rome took the war to Africa in 256 before Christ. After the Battle of Cape Ecnomus, possibly the largest naval battle in history by number of combatants, the Romans landed and put Carthage on the ropes. But fortune turned. Carthage hired a Spartan mercenary, Xanthippus, who reorganized their army and, using elephants and Numidian cavalry on flat terrain, crushed the Roman legions at the Battle of Tunis. To make matters worse, the Roman fleet sent to evacuate the survivors was destroyed by a terrible storm, a disaster partly attributed to the instability that the heavy corvus added to the ships. The war stalled again in Sicily. It was then that one of Carthage's most legendary figures appeared, Hamilcar Barca, father of the famous Hannibal. Appointed commander in 247 before Christ, Hamilcar faced a desperate situation: no money or enough troops for an open battle. His strategy was brilliant but insufficient. Guerrilla warfare. From almost impregnable mountain bases like Mount Eryx, he harassed the Romans, cut off their supplies, and kept them immobilized for years. However, despite his tenacity, he never achieved a decisive victory that would change the course of the war. His actions were a long-term strategic failure. After more than 20 years of war, both sides were on the verge of financial and demographic collapse. This is where the fundamental difference between the two powers was demonstrated: Roman tenacity. While Carthage hesitated, the Roman Senate, with empty coffers, sought loans from its wealthiest citizens to build one last fleet. This new navy of 200 ships was different. The Romans, after years of war, were now experienced sailors and decided to abandon the corvus. Their ships were now lighter, faster, and more maneuverable, designed to outperform the Carthaginians at their own game. In 241 before Christ, Carthage assembled a fleet to bring supplies to Hamilcar's besieged troops in Sicily. But they were at a disadvantage. The ships were overloaded, and their crews, recruited in a hurry, lacked training. The Roman fleet, under the command of Consul Gaius Lutatius Catullus, intercepted them near the Aegates Islands. The battle was short and decisive. The agile Roman ships, with expert crews, shattered the clumsy Carthaginian fleet. 50 Punic ships were sunk and 70 were captured. For Carthage, the war was lost. With its army in Sicily isolated and no fleet to support it, Carthage had no choice but to sue for peace. Hamilcar Barca negotiated the terms of the Treaty of Lutatius, which were harsh. Carthage had to abandon all of Sicily, release prisoners without ransom, and pay a massive war indemnity of 200 talents of silver. Sicily became Rome's first province, marking the beginning of its expansion outside of Italy. For Carthage, the defeat brought more calamities. Bankrupt, it couldn't pay its mercenaries, which unleashed the brutal mercenary war that nearly destroyed the city. Taking advantage of this weakness, Rome, in a cynical act, also annexed Sardinia and Corsica. The long-term consequences were momentous. Rome was consolidated as the dominant power of the Western Mediterranean. The humiliation and resentment in Carthage, embodied by Hamilcar Barca, sowed the seeds of the next conflict. To pay the indemnity, Hamilcar embarked on the conquest of Hispania, forging a new empire and a power base for his family. And before leaving, he made his 9-year-old son, Hannibal, swear an eternal hatred of Rome. The First Punic War had ended, but the struggle for supremacy had just begun. The First Punic War wasn't just a military victory for Rome. It was the trial by fire that transformed a peninsular power into an unstoppable empire. If you like this journey into history, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what other great conflict you'd like us to explore. Until next time.